All right. Another episode of the More To It podcast, Hail Varsity Magazine, hailvarsity.com. I am pleased to be joined by my man, Stewart Bradley, live from Los Angeles, California. Brother, how you been?
I'm good, man. Thanks for having me on. It's good to sync up.
Yeah. We've this is like I think the fourth time we've tried to sync up in the last week. That's what happens when you're dealing with a pandemic crisis in this nation. But it's good. I'm glad we finally got that worked out. We got some technological issues figured out. But speaking of the whole pandemic thing, how are things in California, in the LA area, with you and the fam right now?
We are healthy and good. The pandemic in California, I think, it hasn't been as bad as New York or those markets, but it's fairly intense. Everything's closed. People wear masks outside the house. We haven't really seen anyone in the past few weeks besides, the random person walking their dog. So it feels kind of spooky being out and about. And the grocery store is definitely an intense experience. But I don't usually talk to people in the grocery store anyway. So other than the mask and the gloves, it kind of feels the same.
Like they here in Lincoln, they made like a recommendation: if you go into public, you should wear a mask. Or like is everyone wearing masks in LA? Because I mean, there's more and more people. I mean, not everyone's wearing them. I mean, I rarely go into public. I went to the grocery store today and I saw a lot more people wearing masks. But are the majority of people rocking a mask back there?
Yeah, I think it's just, if you're young and you don't know if you have it or not, it's almost more consideration for other people than it is that I'm really spooked that I'm going to get it. It's more, can I give that 70-year-old lady buying a can of soup a little peace of mind by putting a mask on? Like, sure, I'm happy to wear a mask. So it feels like a pretty low, a pretty light ask to make people feel comfortable. That's where it feels the most stressful, man, is seeing like the old people going to get groceries look legit scared, because it's scary for them. So, trying to be sensitive about that kind of stuff.
Well, it's funny. I always find myself when I'm at the store. We did a big home, not renovation, but a little outdoor project. And I was at Home Depot a couple times, and when you get some older people and they kind of look at you, see a younger person walk by, they're just kind of like, "Hey, dude, don't get near me." It's almost like I have like something above my head, like a flashing red light that says, "Hey, he could be a carrier. don't come in near with him." It's just kind of an eerie feeling when you go out in public now and you get looked at a little differently.
Yeah, man, it's unprecedented. This is a crazy time. No spring ball.
Right. But when do you think things will get back to normal? Because you had the IHME come out and said, they anticipated 200,000 to 300,000 deaths. Now they've backed way off and said it could just be 30 to 120,000 deaths in the U.S. I know we got to stay in our lane here because obviously we're not doctors or anything like that. But I think it's always interesting to see when you think life will get back to somewhat of a normal, even though I don't think it ever gets back to completely normal after this. But numbers are down. Whether they overreacted or it's just they took the correct measures at the right time. But how do you think things will get back to normal, or how soon do you think things will get back to normal to where you live?
Yeah, man, I don't know what the new normal looks like. I think if we get a vaccine and fatalities and new cases just totally go down, it probably normalizes a lot quicker. If it has to work its way through the population, then I don't know. But I guess it's somewhat promising that you're seeing a flattening of the curve in places like Italy and New York and France, where really been massive hotspots. But it's beyond my my scope to make a
dude.
a time prediction on it. I think maybe the best case scenario that it's actually spread a lot broader than the cases are indicating, and when they can start testing people, they'll see that a lot of people have antibodies and have actually had it, and hopefully we can look back and say that it wasn't overreaction. That would be a best case, right?
Right. Well, let's put it this way. I got to stay in my lane, and it is what it is. Do you think football is played this fall?
I sure as hell hope so.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot better shot that football season happens than basketball season
Right.
happens, right? I think it probably will. I think I'm going to think that it's going to happen because it makes me more sad if I think it's not going to happen.
Well, right. Yeah, and I think, let's be honest. I mean, it doesn't happen, but it just, the amount of money that's involved in NFL and college football, it's almost like, not to sound too insensitive, but like, it's almost like too big to not happen,
Yeah.
But it'd be wild if it does, man. I don't know what people would do if it does. I hope it does. But speaking of football, let's go back to our days when we were roommates in college, and what these kids are dealing with now. Could you imagine no classes, online, no spring ball? We all know, I know people around here are like, gosh, these kids need to be practicing. They need the spring ball. They need to work. But we know as players how crappy dealing with spring ball is, and it's just like the unnecessary evil that you have to go through. How nice would it have been just to get like, oh, no spring ball for this year, and
oh my gosh,
the unnecessary beating up yourself against other teammates for 14 days.
Yeah, man. I would have loved to not have played spring ball. I mean, obviously in the NFL, you don't have spring ball, and you can get prepared, taking care of your body the right way. I think there's clearly oversight that needs to happen. I imagine that the biggest hurdle is just the lack of install time, right? Not being able to kind of give younger guys that are early enrollers some reps in the system. Also, I guess the turnover that colleges have that you don't have in the league means you kind of need to settle out position battles and like who who do you shuffle where and how do you kind of work all that stuff out. Like they have pretty hard time requirements for when they can get involved with the kids during the season. So it seems like it's going to be a challenge from a coaching perspective, especially for a program like Nebraska where it's dynamic and things are changing, and you're expecting to see growth and influx of new people. But I'm confident that the guys, the coaching staff, can sort it out.
Yeah, I think best case scenario for them getting back to practicing, I think like June 1st would be like a best case scenario, and they get some sort of waiver where they can finish out practices. Now, I don't know if those will ever be in pads, but they can have essentially what we, in the NFL, the guys go through as OTAs, no pads, maybe helmets, where you can do some things, maybe not 11, some light 11 on 11 stuff. But that's the word I heard yesterday. That's what they're kind of hoping for, is that they'll be able to get kids back on campus by June 1st and get working out. So we shall see, just like with everything that we deal with in, this craziness right now. Seems like about every 4 hours, something is changing.
I think for most of the positions, you can probably get a lot of the work you need without having pads on, right? If you don't know how to run fast and hit people, you probably are doing the wrong thing, or the coaches are doing a bad job of recruiting. But I'd imagine the guys in the trenches are gonna miss having the pads on, right? It's just hard to really work.
Yeah, it is,
with a line without having pads on.
You need to get rid of the rust and kind of sharpen your sword a little bit. Hand placement at pad level, such a big, as as well as playing on line of scrimmage. Your time spent as a Sam linebacker, so you got to be able to hand placement, pad level. You can't really. It's hard to do to an extent when you're in just helmets. So they're definitely taking a hit to that.
I mean, they use those little shoulder pad things, right? That kind of to help shells, like the AC joint from getting popped or collarbone getting popped with a face mask. I think you can do it if you kind of set the intensity level the right way, and maybe you're not blitzing backers, right? So you're letting guys go pretty quick. And maybe it's more edge rushers that really can get work. The internal guys, like, it's hard to really work on your interior moves in a realistic way without pads on, though. That'll be a challenge.
Yeah. Could you imagine if we go back to 2006 and you and I and Zach Taylor were roommates, what in the world we'd be doing right now without any school? And you can work out, but I don't even know if they can use the facility right now. What in the heck would we be doing back in 2006 in quarantine? I mean, let's be honest. Would you have stayed back or gone back home?
I don't know. I probably would have stayed, right? I'm curious how quarantined these guys really are. Like, the people actually going home, or they are like, oh, like, the team is already exposed to the team, and so guys are going to hang out. And I imagine some of that's going on. People are probably playing lots of video games. But there's a case to be made if guys are staying on top of their diets, which is a big question mark, and exercising, that they'll be pretty fresh and ready to go.
Yeah.
And with no school, I mean, can you still be sending materials and getting guys up to speed on new installs? From a coaching perspective, I don't know the rules in college football about and how they're going to apply.
Anything right now was, I mean, I believe there's like half the guys are still back, and that's mainly guys that are from here. I think are on campus. They're trying to get work guys back in just so they can make sure that their schoolwork's getting done. Because let's be honest, like, trusting a 19-year-old kid or 20-year-old kid who already struggles going to class when he's there to get online stuff done and then eat right and get them the nutrition, I think that's the biggest challenge. And so they can get some sort of supervision on them, because it's hard to trust an 18-year-old, 19-year-old freshman, let alone, let's be honest, there's some 21, 22-year-old seniors that probably need a lot of supervision as well.
Yeah, man, it's an interesting challenge. I wonder how many guys or people who really count on the scholarship and the food just to be healthy and live. If you're going home and your kind of family situation's not great from a resource perspective, like, you have less well-to-do families that can't really afford some of that food, and there's a great training facility, obviously, with food options that keep guys healthy. And if you can't feed, or I wonder if there are scholarship checks adjusting for the fact that they're not going to be able to eat in the food hall, and how are they figuring that out? But I can see it being ugly when guys are just eating McDonald's every day, especially the big boys,
Right. Yeah, I do know that if they're on campus, they are getting meals like pre-made. You just got to swing by and, like, they'll bring them out to your car. I think there's like 120 athletes just within or all universities are still on campus that are getting all their food and meals. But dude, I mean, these guys are getting, so do you remember these guys, speaking of scholarship checks, these guys are getting like $1,500 a month now in scholarship checks. It's like triple what we got.
Ours is like $625 or something.
I don't even know if it's that much. I don't even know if it's that much. I mean, these guys are rolling. Like, if I had $1,500, I mean, you literally have like $1,000 to play with every month. I mean, we'd have like $100 after bills are spent. And we're like, well, you better save this up for,
you got to go to
a night on O Street or something, because that's about all you're going to get out of it.
That's crazy appreciation. I can't believe it's gone up so much.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, no.
I mean, having lived in New York and LA, though, being a single guy, even if you are in school and living on $1,500 a month, sounds like you won't really have a place to live. So it's nice that it's crazy to think that you could, even back in the day, 15 years ago, with $600, I could pay rent and feed myself for a month.
Well, they fed us for the most part. I mean,
yeah,
that was.
I was always augmenting my meals.
Yes, yeah, all the augmenting and personally probably building 10 of the new DeLeons that are in Lincoln, Nebraska now.
But this, it's always the linebackers and the DBs and the receivers that look skinny. They're the guys that eat a ton of food, right?
Oh yeah, right.
So
yeah. Well, I had to eat a ton just to keep my weight on, but it was. I mean, we could put. I mean, I can still put on the feed bag and get down like if need to be. Like if I'm super hungry, like I get out and I hadn't eaten lunch and it's like okay, I've been out and been active, maybe on the golf course. I mean, eating like an extra large pizza is still no problem for me.
I never stopped, man. The feed bag's still attached. It got strapped on when I was 18 in Lincoln, and it's still on there. So when the metabolism turns off, it's gonna get real ugly.
Oh yeah, I know. We chatted on the phone for last week for an hour or so. We're talking about how we're trying to intermittent fast and do all this stuff to keep so we can still eat, but yet not get to like 285.
Yeah, man, I'm not much lighter than when I played, but it's a different kind of weight. It's not as pretty.
Yeah, I hear you.
I used to be fine taking my shirt off, and now it's there's a lot of calculation that goes into who's around and what's looking and how much light is outside.
Yeah, I think I got weighed the other day. I was like 272 with shoes and shorts and stuff on and clothes, so that's like 268. I'm not far either.
Yeah, man.
I guess I'll just air out my weight to everyone else. I guess I'll just own it.
Yeah, I'm not even gonna say my number, but it's not far off.
Hey, take me back to you brought up an 18-year-old kid and you're from Salt Lake City. How did you get out of Salt Lake City and not go to the hometown school in Utah?
They weren't as good as they are now, man.
Was Urban not there?
Urban wasn't there. Also, recruiting is so different, right? Like the amount of exposure that you can get as a kid in, Salt Lake or Idaho or wherever is so much higher now than it used to be. I feel like you're either from California, Texas, Florida, maybe you're in the Rust Belt states, or you got a hometown school that's pretty good. And if you're in Utah, Idaho, New Mexico, Nevada, there weren't a lot of kids that were going to big programs back then. And, we ran the option in my high school. So obviously I was like, Eric Crouch is like, I'm the next Eric Crouch. And then you go to camp in Nebraska and they're like, yeah, you're like 235, bud. And 6'4", I think you're probably a linebacker. And also you don't run a 4.3. So you need to rethink your positioning. But yeah, man, the local schools they weren't in the same tier back then.
But you had because you were offered, because you were recruited by Coach Brown, weren't you? Ron Brown?
Yeah, Ron, for sure.
Yeah.
Go with Coach Brown.
Yeah, but because were you still under that gray shirt kind of phrase, or when you first came in, were you initially a walk-on? I can't remember, because I knew you were soon put on scholarship, but initially you had some sort of stipulations, right?
Yeah, I was like, I had the red shirt and kind of reassess, and there was like a grant, so kind of in that weird gray shirty, like,
right,
we'll figure it out. But yeah, I put me on scholarship, I think before my after my redshirt year, so they held by their word.
Yeah, I mean that's a good thing Nebraska always does. I mean, but there was no. I mean, even though, I mean, what other schools you're getting recruited by? Because obviously you're a really good athlete. You played rugby as well, and you went to high school with Lodi Nada, and so there was a lot of eyes being on your school. Was it Highland? Did you go to Highland there in Utah, if I remember right?
Highland, yeah.
In Salt Lake. But like, what other schools did you get interest from?
Oregon and Oregon State were probably the most aggressive schools. This is like the Joey Harrington kind of time when Oregon was first interesting. And Erickson was at Oregon State, and like I think this was when Carroll was just at USC, and I don't know if he was even there yet, but they were not really as interesting.
Mm-hmm.
I think the Pac-12 schools that were interesting was Oregon and Oregon State, and then Utah and BYU, and that's kind of the extent of it. I got invited to a Nike camp in Oregon, but then didn't end up going. Had an injury, and I think that kind of curtailed some of the exposure. But fortunately, before I got nicked up, I had gone to the Nebraska camp, and there was interest there. But I didn't play my senior season. Broke my collarbone. So it was really just more like, maybe we like your genetics and we can mold you into something, but there wasn't a lot on film to really go by. So I think that kind of changed the recruiting process somewhat, and Nebraska was open enough to figure something out and saw some potential, and I'm glad they did.
Yeah, well, it's crazy. I mean, I forgot you played quarterback in high school. I mean, I played running back in high school, but then we're both, you become a linebacker, I become a defensive end. But that just kind of just shows, like, out of the box. I don't know if you call it out of the box recruiting, but like, I don't know if it happens as much now. It used to happen, in the 80s and 90s, where you took a safety and he became a linebacker, or you took a wide receiver and he became a tight end, or vice versa, because you just got speed and athleticism. Let's be honest, you can squat and run as much as you want, but you're not going to all of a sudden run a 4.9 and run a 4.4. I mean, you have to kind of already be athletic and have some speed in there. And
yep.
it's just kind of, it's good to hear that. I mean, you and I are two, total opposite positions. What we played and excelled in high school, we just did completely opposite. It's kind of fun to, think about.
Yeah. I mean, I think I'd be curious if you're in maybe a smaller market, if you're a collegiate level athlete and you're not an actual like O lineman, D lineman, like a guy that's, going to be $3 bills one day. I'd imagine that most of the guys who are going to play at the next level have the ball in their hand. And, I was a quarterback, but effectively it was a running back. Right. And
right.
Maybe their, tight ends or receivers are different, but I still think a lot of linebackers probably are carrying the ball, and rush ends are maybe carrying the ball. There's also more exposure then. I mean, there's more exposure now for kids to get their tape out, and there's more camps. And so if you're a guy who's 6'4", 225, and kind of lanky, and you're like, look like you can rush the passer, you can showcase your skills at enough camps and work on that craft, knowing you're going to be that position at the next level. Where when we were in school, it's like, I don't know if college recruiters are going to see this tape or going to come to my games, and the most notoriety to come with scoring points, right? So
right.
you gravitate towards, give me the, like, if I'm the most athletic guy on the team, I should have the ball. And I think that you're right. It's probably changed. Like, you can be a pass rushing specialist and go to pass rushing camps and have a pass rushing coach. And, because your frame and your speed and kind of all those ratios, it's clear you're going to be a defensive end, right?
Yeah.
So the specialization is going to help guys, right? Maybe it hurts some people, but I think if I had known I was going to be a linebacker my whole life, my level of preparation coming in Nebraska would have been so much better than all the time I spent doing throwing drills and
right.
learning how to run the zone option as a quarterback.
Right. Yeah, I remember getting recruited by Iowa State, and that was the only other. I went on an unofficial into their spring game. They only had like maybe 100 people there, but they're like, "No, we want you to play running back here." I'm like, "Yeah, right." Or you're just telling me that to get me here. I knew for sure they would switch me, but it just says, you know, we weren't from. I mean, you were from Salt Lake, which is obviously a lot bigger than I was from the outside of Omaha, but you're going to get your best athletes and your best players, and maybe it's just more of kids don't play both ways as much. Like when you're that back in, I can't, I'm starting to say back in our day, because I mean, I guess we're getting that old now. I hate saying that, but I feel like kids don't play both ways as much anymore. In the bigger cities, I think still here in Nebraska, I think kids are still playing both ways for the most part. But you never left the field, and you're going to play running back, or your best athlete's going to play running back or quarterback, no matter what. So I think just in general, specialization in sports has, I don't know if is hurt kids, but I think sometimes it definitely hasn't helped them in developing, or maybe even overdeveloping, just to some degree.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's a really interesting line of thinking, right? Because I think if you went through the draft process and actually go to the draft and looked at those questionnaires, I bet guys in those draft rooms would give higher marks to a kid who played more sports in high school than someone who didn't, right? I think they want to see just the ability to do diverse things, right? Like, oh, he played basketball or he played tennis. Like he can adopt new skills, and I think they value that. And the things that different schemes require you to do from a position perspective, even if you're just like, I'm a linebacker, right? If I'm an inside linebacker and I'm running a cover two scheme, or we only play quarters, or it's a 3-4, it's a 4-3, or you zone blitz a lot, or you play a lot of man, like the skill set, the athlete, the the things you want to refine are just actually dramatically different. I know that seems like we're kind of really inside baseball right now, but your ability to predict, what system you're going to go to if you get a chance to play college ball, and who your DC is and where they want to sit you, like I just don't think you can map those things out. And so for some positions like quarterback and pass rusher and receiver, I get there's a real skill element to it, but playing corner or safety or DB or tight end, I feel like a lot of those positions are so dependent on the scheme you play and who your coach is, that you'd be almost better off playing a bunch of stuff.
Right.
Just
Yeah, it's the recruiting and just specialization now. It's like I recorded a pod with Darren Erstad, a few weeks ago, and it's been released already. And he's like, you can't really call it bad, but it's just the way things are going. I asked Bo Rude this question, and just kind of diving deeper into our time at Nebraska. I'm trying to think of the way I put it to him, but our time spent in our Nebraska, because we were Solus recruits. We finished with Callahan, and I kind of joke and talk with people that our time there was forgotten. Like fans want to get like the the Men in Black thing flashing from their eyes so they can forget that time frame. Is that like, does that, because it kind of pisses me off a little bit, because I think I think we underachieved with the talent that we had there, but also we had to deal with coaching changes and kind of square peg round hole situations. But it just I get a little frustrated by that. People are just, because I have a guy I did radio with, and he refers to it as a case of the 4-year flu. And it's like, man, like we worked our asses off during that time frame and went through a lot. And it just kind of sucks that, people want to forget about it, almost like wipe it away from their memories in history books. And it's, and Bo had an interesting take on it. I want to get yours on it.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're primarily the victim of recency bias, right? Like we were the vintage of Nebraska football that came right after the peak of the program to date, right? Not saying that we're not going to get back there. I'm very much confident that we will, but you go from, 94, 95, almost 96, definitely 97, and then you're a top 5 team in 99, and then you go to the national championship, and then we're the team after that, right? Or we were like the vintage after that. It was a lot of misappropriation of maybe talent and what people thought would be an easy fix. And I don't want to be too inflammatory, but I feel like there was a real culture shock from an offensive perspective, right? Just like you're big running the ball team, needed to kind of adjust to more of a passing offense. And I think some of that just had to happen because that's where the game was going, right? Mm-hmm. You can run the ball 40 times a game or 50 times a game if you just have superior talent, but you're clearly seeing talent parity across the nation. And, running the ball works when you're leading games, but it's hard when you need to come back. And so I think there's validity in why some of those changes happened. I think that it could have definitely been done with Frank at the helm, right? And that was kind of the biggest regret, I think, if I had to go back and assess, is just there's so much knowledge and tradition and stuff that left when they got rid of Frank and that whole staff. And they were really the keepers of a lot of that stuff. So I understand the sentiment when you hear people say that. I think that's kind of how I think they're framing it, is that there was a break in the chain. We had a lot of really good guys in those teams, people that played a lot of years in the NFL. I mean, I think if you looked at the amount of guys that got drafted and were on rosters successfully playing from when we were there, at least from the defensive side of the ball, I don't think it was different than the 90s, right? Maybe you had some higher draft picks, but if you looked at guys who were on rosters playing ball in 2008, 2009, 2010, from a defensive side of the ball, I don't think it was that different than in 1999 and 2000 when those guys who were winning national championships were coming. So like the caliber of defensive player that were in the league coming out of Nebraska, I don't think was that different. I do think that continuity of coaching staff, scheme, tradition, a lot of that stuff that lived and was fostered inside of coaches that have been there for 20 years, we weren't the benefit of that because they were gone. And that's, I guess, on Steve Peterson and trying to put his stamp on the program. And that's like the real sadness to me. But yeah, I mean, I guess I don't take it personally, but it's probably easier for me maybe because I'm not in Nebraska and people aren't mentioning it as much as maybe you guys hear it.
True.
And I might have a different opinion if it was told to me all the time. Right.
Yeah. Well, that too. And maybe because, I grew up wanting to play there and idolizing, every player at Nebraska, and just being a Nebraska kid, it obviously affects me a little deeper. But could you imagine if Frank would have been there still, our 4.5 years, whatever you want to call it, and Bo Pelini was still the defensive coordinator? What would that have been like?
Yeah, man, it would have. I mean, it's super interesting. That's a really fat what if. I like it though. I think it would have been totally different, right? It's making me excited thinking about what our experience would have been like. But at the end of the day, definitely loved my time at Nebraska. And I think if people talk about it as the 4-year flu, they should realize that, a bunch of the guys who are on staff at Nebraska now came out of that vintage. Scott Frost was a GA, and we were around him. Like, that's where he kind of started his coaching career with us.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, a lot of the people that are helping steer the ship in the right direction got a bunch of their exposure with the program through those years, and we're clearly actively trying to push the program back to its former glory. So, maybe the fact that a bunch of us didn't get to experience the Nebraska that Scott Frost and the guys who came through the 90s got, and the mystique with which that's kind of presented is driven a bunch of guys like GA and Barrett to help capture it again. Right. And so it's kind of fuel to the fire and a lot of the people that are helping the program rebuild.
Yeah. You mean, you mentioned the talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I mean, offensively, they had some really good talent too. I did a piece with Hell Varsity. They've been kind of with no sports going on. They've kind of gone back and broken down some games, and they broke down the 2007 Cotton Bowl, our senior year. And we just talked about the talent and defensively, offensively. And the first word that came to mind, I've already mentioned it here just a few minutes ago, was underachieving that year, just because of how close we were. I had the game won against Texas. I don't know if we beat USC at USC. USC was ridiculously good. I still think we should have won that game against Oklahoma, the Big 12 championship. Should have beat Auburn in the Cotton Bowl, but how close we were, and I just feel like what we had there, and again, hindsight's always, 2020, and you can't ever look back on it. But I totally feel like we underachieved, and we could have got a lot more done our senior year.
Yeah, I think that's right. I would say the complexity of schemes that I learned when I got to the league was shockingly higher than what we were running when we were at Nebraska. I would also say that for most guys that were drafted with me and kind of coming, maybe drafted after I was in the league, they might have had a smaller ramp up, if that's a politically correct way of saying it. I think we were running pretty simple stuff. It was like, field blitz, maybe 1 or 2 man blitzes, a lot of quarters, and like a kind of shit attempt at cover 2. But it was just like,
under 54, man.
Do you remember playing Missouri? And
which year? Our senior year?
Yeah, our senior year. Even our junior year, right? I wasn't in that game as I blew the knee out, but I remember seeing the signals come from the defensive sideline on TV, watching the game, and the entire offense from Missouri would then turn to look at their sideline, and then call a run play that went smack dab the opposite of the blitz, and you're just like, this doesn't feel like this feels like a stacked deck. Right.
Well, I remember, a lot of times that's because we ran so much zone blitzes, and especially coming from the field. Even we had some boundary blitzes, but because I was always the guy that went away from. Went to if it was the blitz was coming to the field, I went towards the boundary. I was the guy who was dropping into coverage. But it was, I've gone back and watched games, and I had like, holy hell, like we'd run that blitz 20 to 30 times a game. And that's no exaggeration.
Oh, yeah, it's not good. It's really not good. I don't know how to say it. It's just really not good.
So that's one question I wanted to get into, because you transition, you were a third-round draft pick into the Philadelphia Eagles. They asked you to play middle linebacker in a 4-3 defense. And I went to a 3-4 outside linebacker, which was like learning how to throw left-handed, but you had to play at a professional level, or hit left-handed, and you never did it, and you're all of a sudden you're here, go going at bat in Major League Baseball. So my transition was
Right.
completely different. My football IQ was nowhere near where it needed to be to play fast in a system like that. But you go into a similar style of defenses. But I know where you're going to go with this. But I want to get your you can be a PC as you want about it. But football IQ transitioning from Nebraska into having to make the calls and be a middle linebacker in the NFL.
Yeah, so I mean, I think they drafted me at outside backer, right? And I started my rookie year. I was in camp as a Sam backer, and by the end of the season, I was a starting inside backer. So, I think the first thing is probably just the ability to recognize how best to leverage the tools that you have, right, as a coaching staff, and how you kind of get the most out of the people is maybe it's a sign of a good coach, right? And I was definitely not playing the same position after 6 months in the NFL as I was for 4 years in college. So there's something to be said there. I think, yeah, I don't think it was great, man. I think it was pretty bush league, both from a prep each week to how games were called. And I think some of the calling almost felt like we're more athletic than these teams, so we can dictate. I think when I got to the league, one of the things that most blew my mind was a coach, Jim Johnson, going to be a Hall of Famer, amazing defensive coordinator. I mean, we were a top 2 or 3 ranked defense all the years I was at Philadelphia, and openly being like, this is a hard coverage for you. Like in this call, this is what we're calling this defense because we are trying to take away X. We're exposed with Y. Like we want to take away the inside run and like the vertical out routes because their outside receivers are really good. We're not worried about the tight end. Yes, if they do throw the ball there, you're exposed. We totally get that. Do your best. We'll try and cover. But like just the openness about how schemes are, you're actively giving something to get something. It's like a defensive call is a zero-sum game, right? You have 11 guys. You can pick and choose where they stand, but there is no perfect defense, right? Some of it is understanding what are the tendencies of the offense, right? What are their strengths? What are the things that we can't let them do? What are the things that we're okay letting them win via? When I sat down I had a long conversation with Bill Belichick actually about defense, and that comes across early is that you just need to, the primary goal of maybe a good coordinator is really discerning what the strengths of the offense are, what you can manage, what you can't let them accomplish, and prioritizing, right? Trying to put the hole in every leak in the dike is just not going to work, right? And that's a mix of confidence and know-how and work, and maybe having a broad enough install that you have all the tools, right? And I understand that comparing an all-time great NFL coordinator to a college coordinator is a tough comp, but you got to think you'd at least want to aspire to be at that level, right? And yeah, man, it was maybe that wasn't as PC as I hoped it would be, but
no, but I wasn't asking for it to be, because I think it's interesting, because I mean the knowledge I gained from, because I had to know so much more. I mean, being a defensive lineman, you used to listen for calls. You never had to make calls. You had to listen, and you really had to pay attention to one guy in front of you, and that was the offensive tackle or a tight end. All of a sudden, being an outside linebacker, you're communicating with the D-line, corners, safeties. You got to recognize formations. You got to know what personnel it is, just because, and you got to think so much. Where D-line, you didn't have to do that. But what I learned from my time spent was like, holy smokes, man! I wish I would have known not even half of this, a quarter of this, and just like how, like, it's just the why. Why? I think the best thing that I think we never got was the why. Why are they doing this to you? You know, I don't know if you ever
Right.
got that, but it's like, why is this tight end like this? Why is this fullback like this? Why is this tackle in guard? Why are there splits like this? We just never got the why. It was just like, no, here's your base rules, which I get. You have to live it. But like, I've always been a guy. It's like, why? You just never got the why. And I think sometimes when you understand why they're doing this, you can play that much faster. And that's my, in a synopsis of, I feel like we're always missing the why.
Yeah, I think it's first principles, right? Understanding what we're trying to solve for and how we're trying to solve it. And so you can, to your point, react fast, right? If you know where the weakness is and you know where your protections are and you actually know where people are around you, it frees you up, right? I mean, the challenge that you have in any defense from a coverage perspective is like the offense knows where they're going and we don't know where they're going, right? And so if I have to cover a running back and I don't have any help anywhere and I don't understand where help is and I don't know where guys are going to be looking and maybe guys aren't even clued in to help because they don't know where the weakness is. That's a really tough ask. Like you ask someone who's 6'4", 250 to cover someone who's, 210 pounds and way, way faster.
Mm-hmm.
It's not going to get done. But if you really have people clued in and you're playing team defense, then, and I know that I have help inside, I can be super aggressive on the outside move.
Right.
And that's when you see, the linebacker covering the running back and it looks like, man, how is like, he is just blanketing that guy. It's it's a mix. He's probably an athletic dude, but it's also, he can play fast because he knows he doesn't not worried about the guy going inside.
Right.
And that's a mixture of trust and that kind of stuff. I feel like good defenses all have, and it wasn't something that I think that we really had when I was there in Nebraska.
Yeah. Sticking with the NFL, I always like to ask guys who had spent time, and was there, I look back when I was drafted to the 49ers and like I said, I was a fish out of water, just learning a new position and had to lean upon a lot of guys to just try to help me out. But when you get to that level, not a lot of guys want to help you out in the league because you know why? Because if there's someone drafted in your room, they might be losing their job. How was your situation going into year one in Philly? Was there guys that helped you? Were there guys you leaned on, or do you kind of have to figure it out on your own?
I think it probably comes to like the culture of the team and what the head coach is going to allow. And Andy Reid was a coach at Philly at the time, who I love, and he's very adamant about, listen, we're not hazing guys. We're not like, that's not these are people who are going to help us win. If you care about winning and you want to win, like we're going to assimilate them as quick as possible. And I think guys who are worried about losing their positions are probably destined to lose their positions, right?
Right.
I think there's no better way to reinforce your learning than to teach it to somebody else. And that was kind of the message I think that was distilled from the top in Philly when I was there, is that, Jeremiah Trotter was still there when I got there, right? And by the end of the year, he was gone. I don't think he made it through training camp. And there was a young kid who'd played inside backer, or I shouldn't say young kid. We were all young men. He was older than me, but a guy who had kind of taken Jeremiah's spot. And by the end of the year, I was in his spot, and then he played a different position next year. So it clearly there was a lot of guys moving around, and I think because Andy had kind of just instilled that open communication and very much like we're going to win and we have the talent to win, and like that became the bottom line. That well, you still have to navigate the room, like you clearly, and maybe I'm underplaying the competitive dynamic because it's very palpable in an NFL team room, right? Like you
Mm-hmm.
guys can do the math. Like
Right.
if we only keep 6 linebackers and the 2 starters that play nickel don't play any special teams, like I either need to definitely be starting and be one of those 2 guys or also play special teams. And like, so it's, you get comfortable with it, how cutthroat it is, right? It just
Right.
is, it is what it is. And I think, yeah, I mean, I was fortunate to have landed at that organization. Having played at 3 teams, there's a pretty big disparity between them for sure.
Oh yeah. Can we just talk about you were a teammate of his for a year or two. I got to spend a couple of years around him and share a same meeting room with him. But Takeo Spikes and
Oh man,
how fun it is to play football with that dude, man. I haven't talked to him in a long time. Would love to reach out to him, but dude, he was. You want to talk about a guy with some juice and some energy that makes you get those days where it kind of sucks being out there, but he kind of helps you get through, man. He was an excellent teammate.
yeah, man, I love Takeo, man. He's an all timer, road dog. Like that dude is he's one of the great ones, man. Yeah, nothing but good, fun stories about Takeo. He is a ball of energy, even though he was like 10 years older than we were.
I know.
Loves the game, really knows the game. And I think just enjoyed the game, right? Like I think there's people who can love the game and maybe not like all aspects of it, right? Like I love game day, right? I love
Right.
making a big play. But that Takeo was kind of a dude who loved everything about it, whether it was picking up Popeyes on Friday before, we hop on the flight, or,
Mm-hmm.
going through stretches or hitting the gym. Like he had done it for so long and was so comfortable in it that it was infectious,
They're totally you mentioned when you got to the Eagles, Andy was adamant on no rookie hazing. But did you get a rookie dinner experience? Did you get popped by the linebacker group for a expensive night out?
Well, the linebacker group was kind of in transition, right? We, Trot and Takeo, he got me a little bit. And it was like I was like, a first day pick, and he was just kind of. We had some other. We had a bunch of backers that came on that year, ended up playing ball, but some of them were undrafted guys, and so I was unfortunately the one kind of footed with the bill. It's just you can't split the bill when some guy doesn't get a signing bonus and you have
Right.
one. Like
Right.
you got to do the right thing. But other than the rookie dinner, like there wasn't really anything. But I know like the whole kind of coaching tree, like Steelers guys, like, and that whole line of teams and coaches that kind of come through there, and they're pretty like open with the rookie hazing. Like they let stuff kind of fly.
Right.
I think it was more in like Andy Reid's like a Holmgren guy and a Walsh guy, and kind of through that coaching tree. And I think it's just not how they run it. I'm sure it's idiosyncratic to each of the coaches, but that was my experience.
Yeah, no, I got lucky because even though I was outside linebacker, outside linebackers always met with each other in the same room. But Patrick Willis was a first round draft pick, so he had to.
P. Willis.
He got most of it, but I just had to always, even though my rookie year I was hurt for the whole year, but I had when they left on either Fridays or Saturdays, I had to have food, and it wasn't just from one place. It wasn't like we'll take Popeyes. No, it was like, some guy wants In-N-Out, one guy wants Chipotle, one guy wants Subway. So I had to like go to 8 or 9 different spots to make sure that food was there before they got on the bus to go to the plane. So that was I got it pretty easy though. I'll take that and not have to get bent over for like 10 grand or 15 grand at like Ruth Chris or something like that.
Yeah. So what you described is exactly what happened to me. So yeah, it was it was only Popeyes for us. Every team I played on was only Popeyes. There just wasn't any other options.
So we had it. We did do that, but then some guys are like they were super healthy. So like, one guy's like, oh, I want this certain smoothie from Jamba Juice and like all these things added. And some guys, oh, I want like 2 triples from In and Out. So it was whatever. It was fine. I mean, it was a pain in the ass, but I had no. I mean, you kidding me? If I told them no, I mean, I would that would have been a bad deal.
Yeah. You gotta take what they give you for sure. Yeah, pissing off the entire veteran group of your position sounds like a bad trade, unless you're a quarterback and you're starting. But
Yeah,
quarterbacks are a whole different ball game, right?
Mm-hmm. I mean, you got 8 solid years in, man. You happy with everything? How your career went?
I mean, yeah,
Are we
man.
ever happy though as athletes? Are we always we're never happy? But I mean,
I played a lot of ball,
you
man. I played a
you
lot of
did.
ball. Like once I tweaked, kind of blew my wrist out in the 7th year, definitely had, there was other teams to go play, and I was like, no, I'm good. Like it was a. So I feel fortunate enough to like be the one that was like, I'm ready to be done. And part of it was like, hey, yeah, you're definitely keep playing, but we'll likely have to fuse your wrist. And then like, what does that mean about, can I golf? Can I play tennis? Can I do push-ups? Like, can I type on a keyboard? Like, can I open door handles? Like, no, maybe not, but you can play. And it's like, yeah, man, I'm not nursing a Hall of Fame career here. So
Right.
I'm ready to do other stuff. So,
Right.
did I achieve all the stuff that I hoped to achieve in the game? Like, no. I mean, I was, but I haven't been a starter for a lot of years in the league, and had an All-Pro year. Those, those things feel good. I would have loved to have a ring.
Get close, super close.
Got close, but played in some big playoff games. Played with a bunch of Hall of Fame guys that I still consider close friends, and the game gave me a lot, man. So I think in the grand scheme of things, I really liked my time with the game, and I don't really have regrets, man. It just feels like it was a fun ass adventure,
Yeah. I look back. I keep in touch with a few of my the teammates that and like me in touch. I mean like holler at them on like social media or something like that, or respond to a tweet. Any guys you keep in touch with that you played with in your 8 years still?
Yeah, I think the draft class is.
You're obviously really close with Selleck, so.
Yeah, Selleck and me and we still talk all the time. And I text, guys that I played with, and I still text Decker and Woodyard and guys I played with in Denver, and a bunch of guys I played with in Arizona. Yeah, I feel like there's probably too long of a list of guys I still keep in contact with, and if I say it, then the 2 guys that I talk to that I don't mention are going to be pissed. So.
Well, if they listen to this podcast, then that's good for me. I'll put it that way. Oh man! So, how's the transition been? Because you've kind of known what you wanted to do. You're one of the fortunate people to step away from the game at your own when you wanted to. A lot of people they want to keep playing, but they just don't have any more options. You had, you got into the investment business from early on. How has that transition been for you, and obviously where you're doing now? Just kind of give people update back here on how you're doing and what you're up to now.
Yeah, man, that good old accounting degree from Nebraska came in handy. So, probably credit goes to my dad for just being like, I don't think you'll ever play in the NFL. Like, I mean, that's not how he sounds or what he said, but he's effectively like, even if you do play 10 years in the league and you retire and you're 32, it's like, what are you going to do? You're still young. So, I was actually on IR my last year, blew my wrist out. So I had the time to kind of think about what do I want to do? Do I want to play next year? Um, you know, do I want to, transition, retire, and do something else? And I was looking at going to business school. But I really wanted to just I wanted to do a job when I retired that at least initially wasn't necessarily given to me just because of I play football. Like I wanted to, like, if you do this job, it's because you have aptitude and you kind of can prove that you have the core skills, and the football would just be a kicker. And so finance gelled with my accounting degree, and I, made some calls and kind of studied my butt off, and got some interviews at Goldman Sachs and was able to land a job in New York as a banker in their TMT group, which is just a really cool learning experience. Kind of the ground floor of what it, what it means to work in finance. And it's very much kind of like a draft class, right? It's a hard job to get. And when you're in, you kind of have 10 or 12 people that are in your class, and you're working like 100-hour weeks. And, I think I had the benefit of, while people were massively stressed in the job because it's crazy hours, I was like, this is so much less stressful than anything I was doing previously. Like,
Right.
Maybe I'm working, ungodly amounts of time during the week, but in my old job, if I messed up, my grandma would be sad, and every one of my friends who was kind of cheering me on would be sad, and commentators would publicly call me out in front of the millions of people. Like, it's just a totally different level of pressure. And I think that kind of served me well. So after a year at Goldman, I got a job at a hedge fund in New York, and was there for about 5 years, and have now kind of launched my own shop, my own private equity firm, investing in kind of small private companies. So it's been a fun ride. Still early on, but definitely a different day to day than my first career.
So I hear, brother. That's awesome. I'm happy for how I see your golf. So we're obviously recording this through Skype, and we got video going, but I can see those golf clubs behind you. When those last time those babies been put to use?
I was at Pebble Beach like a week before the quarantine started. Just getting spanked by my brother, who's
really good now.
Yeah, he's really good. You guys should go play. You'll be looking for balls a lot less in the woods if you play with Thomas than you play with me.
Well, I blame you for my golf addiction now, because you are 100% liable for the addiction. I still remember the day in the comments made. I'll never forget
Tell the story.
Well, we were roommates for out of 3 out of 4 years we were at Nebraska, but our first apartment was really close to Highlands Golf Course in Lincoln. So you played golf growing up. I never played. I mean, I had some set I bought at Target that was just, raggedy as hell. And I mean, the first 18-hole round I played with you was with you at Highlands. I think I shot no BS 120. But then we're like, let's get good. Let's get really good. I mean, how silly are we? Because we have 3 total months to play golf in college. I mean, May, June, July, then August hits. You're like, okay, you're gonna go, play football, and obviously have winter. But I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna get really good, and I just haven't stopped since then. And it's
well, dude, I'm jealous because you're so much better than me. But that was leading into junior year, right?
No, dude, this is when this happened. This was freshman year.
Oh, that's right. Okay. Well, the ACL really derailed the golf game for me. Both ACLs, I guess. Right. I was just like, I should probably not hurt my knee golfing until I'm done playing ball. And then as soon as I retired, the month after I retire, I'm like, let me take a job that gives me absolutely zero time to do anything that I want to do. That'll be a great live transition. But hopefully from here on out, my golf game will.
Are golf courses
I'll
even
have more
open
time.
in LA right now? Or are they all closed?
I think they're closed, man.
Really?
I don't know though. I haven't checked.
Yeah.
I'm so new here. I don't have a club.
Well, you got to fix that because I'm gonna come see you, and you're gonna come out here and see us. We're gonna see me, and we'll go play all the good courses here. We'll go play Sandhills and some other ones, and I'm gonna come to LA, and we're gonna do it there too.
I know some people.
Whenever this craziness is over with that we're dealing with, whenever this craziness, we'll do like a home and away golf trip.
Oh, I love it. Sign me up. I'm so in.
It just reminded me when we were this story when we. So remember, like we'd get done with summer conditioning, we had a week off, and Coach K, Dave Kennedy, would be like, "Hey, you got to take a week off to get your recovered to get ready for training camp." And you and I would literally play like 36 holes, like 5 out of the 7 days. And we remember we buzzed our hair going into training camp, and you got sunburnt so bad on your hair.
Oh yeah, I remember it. It was the craziest summer I've ever had. It was literally peeling out of my scalp.
Yeah,
and it's because I was like, "What happened?" You're like, "Well, went to the range. I played 18 holes, and I went to the range for 7 hours, and then I played another. I was outside all day. It was not good, man."
Well, yeah.
Oh my gosh.
The next day, and you're wearing like a stocking cap, and it's like 95 degrees out in like end of July. Just to save your head.
Yeah, but I mean, what was the alternative? Not golf?
Right. No, we had to get it in. Oh my gosh, that's been good. So we've been going on for a little over an hour. I won't keep you much longer, but I always have to end on my 3 and out segment. So I'll ask you our 3 questions before I get out of here. If there was a movie to be made about Stewart Bradley, what actor's playing you?
Good question. Does the actor need to be alive?
No.
Okay. Paul Newman.
Paul Newman. Oh, okay. Yeah, Bo would love you for that one. That's like Bo Rude's favorite.
Yeah.
Famous person ever.
Yeah, okay. Paul Newman. It's a good one.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question, but I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this. You have one concert left to go to for the rest of your life. Either the band or the musician, dead or alive.
I bet you're going to think I'm going to say Bob Marley.
Yeah, I 100% would thought you'd say Bob Marley.
I think that might still be my choice, but the Beatles would be interesting to see too, though, right?
Yeah, right.
Just so iconic that it's like, maybe you need to go see the Beatles. Yeah. Can Bob open for the Beatles or vice versa? Can that be my concert?
Sure. I mean, why not? Why not? It's
okay.
Your world, brother.
Okay.
We're just all living in it.
All right. I like that.
Last question, and we'll get you out of here. Most famous person in your cell phone?
Probably Peyton.
Yeah.
Peyton Manning.
That's a good one.
Yeah, that's probably Peyton.
Okay.
I'm thinking of other guys that I know that are up there, but Peyton's it.
That's right. Because you were there, 2 years with him?
Just one.
Just one?
Yeah. But Peyton's he's great, man. He's a good teammate. Good dude.
Awesome, man. All right, Stu, brother. I appreciate it taking some time out of your day with all the craziness going on. I know you got a couple kids at home, and I know you got to use the restroom. And so we'll end this. And thanks guys for sitting in and listening to Stu and I chop it up for an hour. That's another More to It podcast. Hell Varsity magazine, hellvarsity.com. We'll be back with another one. Thanks.